know that feeling when someone hands you a bill at a restaurant, and for just a split second your stomach drops? Not because you can't cover it, but because some part of your brain still isn't sure. That low-grade anxiety that follows you into grocery stores, into salary conversations, into every time you open your banking app and hold your breath before the number loads. You're not broke, but you don't feel free either. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's this voice that says, maybe I'm just bad with money. Here's what I want you to know before we go any further. You're not bad with money. Nobody ever taught you how. My name is Sachi, and I spend a lot of time thinking about financial psychology. Why smart, hard-working people still feel completely lost when it comes to money. And more importantly, what actually changes when they finally get the information they were never given. You grew up in a country where money touches every single part of your life. Your health, your housing, your education, your relationships, your sense of safety. And yet, at no point in your formal education did anyone sit you down and explain how any of it actually works. Think about that for a second. 13 years of mandatory schooling, hundreds of hours learning the quadratic formula, the causes of the War of 1812, how to diagram a sentence. But not one required class on how to build a budget, how interest works, what a credit score actually measures, how to negotiate your salary, what to do with your first paycheck, how to avoid the financial traps that are literally designed and marketed specifically at people your age. Not one class. And then you turned 18, and the world handed you a credit card application and said, "Good luck. This isn't an accident. The financial system in America was not built to educate you. It was built to profit from your confusion. And the less you understand about how money works, the more money other people make off of you. Late fees, high interest rates, predatory loan terms, insurance policies you don't need, investment products with hidden costs. The entire machinery runs more smoothly when you don't know what questions to ask. So you went through your 20s doing your best. Maybe you made some mistakes. Maybe you took on debt you didn't fully understand. Maybe you avoided looking too closely at your finances because what you'd find there felt too overwhelming to face. Maybe you watched your peers buy houses or talk about their 401k contributions and felt that quiet sinking feeling, like everyone got a manual you somehow missed. That feeling has a name, and it's not stupidity, it's financial illiteracy, and it was given to you. You didn't choose it. But here's where the story changes. Because the moment you understand that your confusion about money is not a personal failing, but a predictable outcome of a system that never taught you, everything shifts. The shame lifts. And in its place, something much more useful shows up. Curiosity. And curiosity, when it's pointed at the right information, is the most powerful financial tool you'll ever own. So let's talk about what nobody ever taught you. Not the tactics first, not the budget spreadsheets and the investment accounts and the 5-step plans. Those come later, and they matter. But before any of that works, you need to understand the thing underneath all of it. The thing that actually determines whether any financial advice sticks or just slides off you like every other thing you've tried. You need to understand your money story. Every single person walking around on this planet has a money story, a set of beliefs, emotions, and automatic responses around money that were formed before you were old enough to question them. Most of these beliefs came from watching your parents. Some came from specific moments, a time the electricity got shut off, a fight you overheard about bills, a feeling of embarrassment at school because you couldn't afford something the other kids had. These moments didn't just hurt in the moment. They wrote code. They installed a set of operating instructions in your brain that have been running quietly in the background ever since. And those instructions shape every financial decision you make, often without you realizing it. Here's a common one. If you grew up in a household where money was always tight, your brain learned that money is scarce, that it runs out, that you can't count on it. And so, as an adult, even when you have money, you might find it impossible to hold on to. The moment your account has a comfortable balance, some part of you finds a reason to spend it down, because unconsciously, your brain never learned to trust that the money would stay. Spending it feels safer than saving it, because at least then you got something out of it before it disappeared. That's not irresponsibility. That's a trauma response wearing the mask of a spending habit. Or maybe you grew up in a household where money was talked about as dirty, where wanting more was seen as greedy, where people who had wealth were viewed with suspicion. They probably cheated someone to get it, or they think they're better than us. And so, as an adult, every time you get close to a financial goal, something in you self-sabotages. You undercharge for your work. You talk yourself out of investing. You feel guilty when you spend money on yourself, and guilty when you save it. That's not a character flaw. That's an inherited belief system running on autopilot. Or maybe money was just never discussed at all. It was a closed door, a topic that made the adults go quiet or tense. And so you grew up learning that money is somehow shameful to talk about, complicated, adult, beyond you. And that belief kept you from asking questions, from learning, from engaging with your finances with any real confidence. The details differ for everyone, but the pattern is universal. Your relationship with money was shaped long before you earned your first dollar. And until you look at that, really look at it, no budgeting app or investment strategy is going to fix what's happening underneath. This is the part nobody puts in the personal finance books, because it's uncomfortable. It requires you to look at your childhood, your family, your wounds. It's much easier to just tell you to cut your subscriptions and max out your Roth IRA. And yes, you should do both of those things. But if your money story is working against you, you'll find a way to undo any progress you make. Most people do. They get ahead, then blow it. Get ahead, then blow it. The cycle repeats, and they blame their willpower when the real issue is running much deeper. So what do you do with this? First, you name it. You get honest with yourself about what you actually believe about money, not what you think you should believe, what you actually, viscerally feel when you think about wealth, when you imagine yourself having significantly more than you do now. Does it feel exciting? Or does some part of it feel threatening? Like you might lose yourself, or your relationships, or your sense of who you are? These reactions are data. They're telling you exactly where the work needs to happen. Second, you trace it. Where did that belief come from? Who taught it to you? Not to blame them. Most of the time, the people who passed these beliefs down to you were just passing down what they'd been given. Your parents learned their money story from their parents. The scarcity, the shame, the silence. It gets handed down like furniture. But just because it's been in the family for generations doesn't mean you have to keep it. Third, you question it. Is that belief actually true? Or is it just old? Because here's the thing about beliefs. They feel like facts. They feel like just the way things are. But most of what we believe about money isn't truth. It's interpretation. It's a story we built around an experience we had when we were too young to have any perspective on it. The belief that you're bad with money, that's a story. And like every story, it can be rewritten. Now let's talk about what actually changes when you get the real education, because knowledge doesn't just help you make better decisions, it changes how money feels. When you understand how compound interest works, really understand it, not just the textbook definition, but the visceral, gut-level understanding of what it means for your actual life. Something clicks. Suddenly, saving isn't a sacrifice. It's a strategy. It's you making a deal with future you that will pay off in ways that feel almost impossible right now. Let me show you what I mean. If you're 25 years old and you invest $200 a month into a basic index fund, earning an average of 8% annually, which is historically conservative for the stock market, by the time you're 65, you will have contributed $96,000 of your own money. Your total account value? Just over $702,000. That's not a typo. $96,000 in contributions becomes $702,000. The difference, more than $600,000, is money you never earned. Money you never worked for. Money that showed up because money that was already there kept making more money. That is compound interest, and it is the closest thing to a financial superpower that exists. But here's the part that breaks people's hearts when they hear it. It only works if you start. And the longer you wait, the more expensive that delay becomes. If you wait until you're 35 to start that same $200 a month investment, you end up with around $298,000 at 65. You contributed $72,000, only $24,000 less than the person who started at 25. But you ended up with less than half the money. 10 years. $24,000 less contributed. $400,000 less at retirement. That is the cost of not knowing. That is what financial illiteracy actually takes from you, not in some abstract way, but in real dollars that could have funded your freedom. And nobody told you this at 22. Nobody sat you down and said, the most important financial decision of your life isn't what car you buy or what neighborhood you live in. It's whether you start investing today or next year. So let's start at the beginning. The real beginning. The first thing you need isn't an investment account. It's a buffer. A small, boring, unglamorous pile of cash sitting in a savings account that you do not touch. Not for shoes, not for a flight deal, not for anything that isn't a genuine emergency. The goal to start is $1,000. That's it. Just $1,000. I know that might sound like nothing, or it might sound like a lot depending on where you are right now. But that $1,000 is not about the amount. It's about what it does to your brain. When you have zero savings, every unexpected expense is a crisis. Your car needs a repair. Your dog gets sick. Your phone screen cracks. Each of these things sends a spike of cortisol through your body because there is no margin. There is no cushion. One thing going wrong can unravel your entire month. That stress is not just uncomfortable, it is cognitively expensive. When your brain is in scarcity mode, when it's constantly doing math about whether you can afford to get through the week, it has less capacity for everything else. For creativity, for patience, for the kind of long-term thinking that actually builds wealth. Poverty, researchers have found, is not just a financial condition, it's a cognitive one. The mental load of not having enough money consumes bandwidth that people with financial cushions can spend on other things. It's one of the cruelest aspects of financial struggle. Being poor makes it harder to think your way out of poverty. But $1,000 starts to change that. Not because $1,000 is enough to handle every emergency, it's not. But because it creates a small but real gap between you and disaster. And that gap, even a small one, gives your brain room to breathe, room to plan, room to start thinking like someone who is building something instead of someone who is just surviving. From there, you build toward 1 month of living expenses, then 3, then 6. This is your emergency fund, your foundation. And yes, it takes time. And yes, It can feel painfully slow, especially when you're watching other people talk about their investment returns while you're still trying to fill a basic savings account. But this is not a race, and the people who try to skip this step, who jump straight to investing before they have any cushion, are the ones who end up selling their investments at a loss during the first emergency because they had no other option. The foundation has to come first. Once you have that foundation, now you invest. And here too, the information is simpler than the financial industry wants you to believe. You do not need a financial advisor to get started. You do not need to understand the difference between a put option and a call option. You do not need to pick individual stocks or time the market or do anything clever or sophisticated. You need to open a retirement account, an IRA or a 401k if your employer offers TIM, and put money into a low-cost index fund every single month. Set it up to happen automatically so it doesn't require willpower, and then you leave it alone. That's it. That is the unsexy, unexciting, deeply effective strategy that builds most ordinary wealth in America. Not day trading, not crypto, not the hot stock your coworker told you about. Just consistent, automatic contributions to boring index funds over a long period of time. The financial industry doesn't make money when you do this, which is exactly why they don't lead with it. Now let's talk about the thing that trips up more people than anything else on this journey. Lifestyle inflation. Here's how it happens. You work hard, you get a raise, and instead of directing that extra income towards savings or investments, you upgrade your life to match it. Nicer apartment, newer car, more dining out, better vacations. Your spending rises in perfect lockstep with your income. And 5 years later, you're making significantly more money than you used to. And somehow, you're saving exactly the same amount, which is nothing. This is not a moral failing. This is human nature operating exactly as designed. We adapt to whatever our normal is. And our culture, the advertising, the social media, the keeping up with everyone around you is constantly redefining normal upward. The antidote is simple, but requires intention. Every time your income goes up, direct at least half of the increase towards savings or investments before you ever see it in your checking account. You will adapt to the new normal. You always do. The difference is that this time, your future is being funded while you adapt. This one habit, consistently saving a percentage of every income increase, is responsible for more ordinary millionaires than almost any other financial behavior. Not because it's brilliant, because it's consistent. And consistency, it turns out, is the whole game. Not intelligence, not a high income, not lucky timing or secret knowledge or access to investment opportunities that regular people can't touch. Consistency. The person who invests $200 a month for 40 years beats the person who invests $2,000 a month for 5 years and then stops. Every time. The math is not kind to the sprinters. This is what nobody teaches you. That wealth is not built in moments. It's built in habits. Quiet, boring, unsexy habits that you do when you don't feel like it. When the market is down. When something more exciting is competing for your money. When you're tired and stressed and wondering if any of this is actually going to work. It works. Not quickly. Not in ways that will make for a dramatic story at a dinner party, but slowly, compoundingly, irreversibly. It works. And here's the last thing I want to leave you with. The version of you that feels ashamed about money, the one that avoids looking at bank statements and deflects when conversations turn to finances and secretly wonders if everyone else just has something figured out that you don't. That version of you was created by a gap in your education, a gap that was not your fault, a gap that the people who benefited from your confusion had every incentive to maintain. But that gap can be filled. Not all at once. Not without discomfort. Not without having to look at some things you've been avoiding. But it can be filled. And every piece of real information you absorb, every concept that clicks, every belief you examine and decide to replace chips away at the shame and replaces it with something that actually serves you. Understanding. You are not behind because you're bad with money. You're behind because nobody ever taught you how.